When I was quite young, I remember seeing a documentary in a church setting. The documentary was about American GIs in Korean prisoner of war camps. The gist of the documentary was about the relative ease with which the Americans were broken. The moral was that the faith-based character of these GIs had changed even in the decade after World War II. These Korean GIs were more easily brainwashed because they had no deep convictions. We often hear a reference to the incredible human will to live. This phenomenon has produced some amazing stories, but these are usually in an emergency situation, in a crisis. In day-to-day life, many do make incredible efforts to live and to make something of their future. There are still many rags to riches stories, and those of people who overcome unbelievable hardships with a smile on their face. Yet there are also many stories of a very opposite sort. Many people have a death wish, a self-destructive attitude and lifestyle. People without faith are often governed by pessimism regarding life that becomes an unconscious will to die. It is usually only when they vocalize this death wish that we view them as suicidal. But man without God is in fact always on a death course. Some are overcome by guilt, and so they want expiation of this sin, and they therefore attempt self-atonement. They blame themselves, or they bring problems and aggravations on themselves. They make their lives miserable as though they are unworthy of anything better than misery. This is a form of self-atonement. Its most dramatic manifestation is in fact suicide, at which point they often will say in a note, "This is so I'm not a problem to anyone anymore." Sigmund Freud was controversial in his day for bringing the issue of guilt into his psychoanalysis. This was not welcome in the scientific community at the time. He recognized, though, that guilt was real and needed to be addressed, while others saw it merely as a religious guilt trip that should be dismissed. Freud tried to explain guilt as a subconscious memory of all sorts of things that man supposedly did in his primeval past. But interestingly enough, even while Freud said he could explain guilt from a Darwinian perspective, he never offered any solution to it except his rationalistic explanation. Man without redemption is headed for destruction. This knowledge sometimes manifests itself as a self-destructive behavior. Proverbs 8:26 quotes wisdom as saying, "He that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death." Many today, in fact, do hate life and love death, and so they flirt with death because they refuse life in Jesus Christ. Running away from God is running away from life, from hope, from peace and joy. Running away from God is running towards death. Modern man increasingly manifests this death wish. Our science has increasingly become a description of the meaninglessness of life as mere properties of matter. Personal lives often seem bent on destruction. Alcohol, drugs, and self-mutilation are an extreme form of such behavior, but so are some high-risk thrill sports. The pleasure is in the potential for mishap, the flirtation with death without actually dying. Our national lives are often self-destructive. The immigration and birth rates in some cultures have already doomed them to oblivion. Our laws and courts have increasingly become revolutionary institutions designed to first of all destroy the past in the hopes that something more can rise from the ruins. The modern suicide rate is more than a mental health issue. It's more than about individuals. It's a moral and spiritual issue that is endemic in the West. You often hear about people who have survived a suicide attempt and regretted it. They usually say something about how their reasons for suicide were temporary and in fact manageable. Perhaps that betrays that there are deeper issues that are unstated when people commit suicide. People today without Christ don't have a hope in life. They don't have a joy. So the circumstances of life can often overwhelm them. And while they focus on the circumstances, it's the lack of meaning in their lives that is the real problem. The only real alternative to death is life, and life can only be found in Jesus Christ. All else represents a will to death. People of faith have a will to live and a hope for a better future. If not in this world and in their lifetime, then certainly in eternity. Their hope is not in the circumstances of life, for Christians have at times suffered some very extreme forms of persecution and some very unfortunate circumstances. The Christian hope is in Jesus Christ, the resurrection and the life, who has overcome the world. Jesus Christ has broken death's hold on the believer, and he has given them the will to live and to serve in newness of life.